It was a Tuesday. Not a particularly special Tuesday, just your average, soul-crushing, why is this line so long kind of Tuesday at the Department of Motor Vehicles. Jack Murphy sat behind his counter, rubber stamp in hand, contemplating for the 14,000th time whether he could fashion it into a weapon sharp enough to end his misery. Next, he called out, his voice carrying all the enthusiasm of a sloth on tranquilizers. The fluorescent lights flickered above as they always did at 2:17 p.m. Jack had timed it. He'd been working at the DMV long enough to time everything. 8 years, 4 months, and 16 days of watching people fail to understand the difference between former 12 and former 12 billion. What Jack didn't time, what nobody on Earth could have possibly timed, was the massive shadow that suddenly engulfed the building, plunging the already depressing government office into an even more depressing darkness. Great, Jack muttered. Power outage, that'll really speed things up. But it wasn't a power outage. Outside the DMV windows, an enormous spacecraft hovered over the parking lot, its hull gleaming with an otherworldly metallic sheen that somehow made the DMV's beige walls look even more beige. Admiral Vex Tor stood on the command bridge of the Galactic Dominator, and his forearms crossed over his chitinous chest in what his species considered a display of supreme confidence. His antennae twitched with anticipation. Tactical Officer Zrem, report on Earth's defensive posture, he commanded. Zrem, a smaller version of Vex Tor with only 3 arms, looked confused as he studied the readouts. Sir, I'm detecting nothing. Nothing? Clarify. No orbital defense grid. No anti-spacecraft weapons systems. No military mobilization. Their global communication networks are discussing something called celebrity baby names and arguing about a pineapple on pizza controversy. Vex Tor's compound eyes narrowed. Impossible. Our intelligence clearly indicated that Earth was the most dangerous planet in this sector. Their history is nothing but warfare. They must be concealing their defenses. Outside the DMV, people had begun to gather, pointing smartphones upward. Some were live streaming, others taking selfies with the spacecraft in the background. A few were complaining that the spaceship was blocking their cars. Jack Murphy did what any rational person would do when confronted with potential alien invasion. He sighed deeply and flipped the closed sign on his counter. If aliens were going to vaporize the planet, he was at least going to use it as an excuse for a coffee break. He had just reached the break room when the building shook, and a shaft of light burst through the ceiling. When it faded, 3 7-foot-tall insectoid aliens stood in the middle of the DMV lobby, surrounded by stunned customers. Take us to your military command center, the lead alien demanded. The customers looked at each other, then at the aliens, then back at each other. Sir, you'll need to take a number, called out Debbie from counter 3. The alien commander looked momentarily confused. This is a test. Your human humor will not distract us. We demand to meet with your planetary defense leader immediately. It was at this unfortunate moment that Jack emerged from the break room, coffee mug in hand, directly in the path of the aliens. Hey, he said, too tired to be properly terrified, you can't just cut the line like that. Everyone here's been waiting. Admiral Vex Tor's translator device processed Jack's words, interpreting his complete lack of fear as either supreme confidence or supreme authority. The Admiral's antennae stood straight up, a sign of respect among his kind. You, Vex Tor said, pointing at clawed Jack. You must be an Earth commander. Your disregard for our presence speaks of great power. Jack looked down at his name tag, then back at the alien. No, I'm just a level 3 processing agent. DMV, you need to park that thing somewhere else. You're taking up like 20 spaces. And that was how Jack Murphy, a man whose greatest accomplishment to date was reducing his average license renewal processing time to 4.3 minutes, became humanity's first interstellar representative. Within an hour of first contact, Jack found himself sitting across from Admiral Vex Tor in what appeared to be an alien conference room aboard the flagship. The walls pulsed with an unsettling blue light, and the chair Jack sat in seemed to be analyzing his biological makeup, which felt like a serious privacy violation. So let me get this straight, Jack said, rubbing his temples. You guys have been watching Earth for decades, and you think we're some kind of military superpower? Vextor's mandibles clicked in what might have been amusement. Your deception is admirable, Commander Murphy, but unnecessary. We have studied your planet's history. Your species has spent 93% of its recorded existence engaged in warfare with itself. Well, yeah, humans kind of suck sometimes, Jack admitted. But that doesn't mean we're all soldiers. I'm literally a government clerk. I help people renew their driver's licenses. Ah yes, Vextor nodded knowingly. Your cover as a documentation verification specialist. An excellent facade for military intelligence gathering. Jack stared blankly. No, I really just process paperwork. We're not all. The alien commander cut him off. Our scans detected no centralized defense network, no orbital weapons platforms. Yet your civilians display remarkable combat readiness. Clearly, Earth has evolved beyond traditional military structures to a society where every citizen is a warrior. Look, you've got it all wrong. We're not. A commotion from the viewing screen interrupted them. On the surface, a blonde woman in yoga pants and a North Face jacket was confronting one of the alien scout ships that had landed in the DMV parking lot. Excuse me, she yelled, gesturing wildly at the spacecraft. You're blocking 4 handicapped spaces. I need to speak to whoever's in charge. The alien security officer monitoring the feed turned to Vextor. Sir, a human female is employing psychological warfare techniques against our ground team. Jack groaned. That's just Karen Williams. Her kid plays soccer with my nephew. She's not psychological warfare, she's just Karen. Admiral Vextor observed the woman with newfound respect. Her face had turned an impressive shade of red as she demanded the spacecraft be moved immediately, threatening to call the manager of space if necessary. Remarkable control of capillary dilation as an intimidation display, noted Vextor. And her sound projection requires no amplification technology. Is she one of your elite units? She's a regional sales director for a multi-level marketing company that sells essential oils. Jack sighed. Look, can I just go home? I've got leftovers in the fridge I need to eat before they go bad. The Admiral's antennae twitched in what Jack was beginning to recognize as excitement. Your casual disregard for this first contact situation. It's part of your training, isn't it? To remain calm under extraordinary pressure. Outside, Karen had begun taking photos of the spacecraft's landing gear, where it had crushed a concrete parking bumper. This is going straight to the city council. You can't just land wherever you want. Observe how she documents our vulnerabilities, whispered one of the alien officers. Such precision. Jack slumped in his chair. She's going to post that on Facebook and complain about alien parking etiquette. That's not military intelligence. Admiral Vextor turned to Jack with what appeared to be genuine admiration. Commander Murphy, your commitment to maintaining this civilian facade is commendable, but unnecessary. We recognize Earth's brilliant strategy, a planet where every citizen is a disguised warrior. No traditional military needed when your entire population is a defense force. Jack opened his mouth to object, then closed it again. What was the point? These aliens had somehow convinced themselves that humanity's chaotic, disorganized, everyday rudeness was actually some kind of master military strategy. And perhaps strangest of all, Jack was beginning to think this misunderstanding might be the only thing keeping Earth from becoming an alien parking lot. By day 3 of the alien observation mission, Jack had been reluctantly promoted to Earth military liaison officer, despite his continued insistence that he was just a DMV employee with an expired gym membership and a collection of unmatched socks. Admiral Vextor had established a command post overlooking downtown, where alien surveillance teams monitored human activities with increasing alarm. Jack sat beside the Admiral, nursing his 4th cup of coffee and wondering if alien invasion would at least get him out of paying his overdue electric bill. Explain this military exercise, Vextor demanded, pointing to a live feed of a bustling street festival. Jack squinted at the screen. That's the annual food truck festival. People stand in line for hours to pay $18 for tiny portions of fusion tacos. The Admiral's antennae quivered. Ingenious, a supply chain resilience simulation disguised as recreation. Your species trains for resource allocation under scarcity conditions while maintaining morale. No, it's just overpriced food that people post on Instagram, Jack sighed, but Vextor was already focused on another monitor. And these young humans? The screen showed teenagers hunched over controllers in a gaming cafe. They're playing Galactic Warfare 5, it's a video game. A combat simulation specialists corrected an alien analyst. Note their reaction speeds and tactical coordination. These are clearly elite training units. Jack didn't have the energy to argue anymore. The aliens had spent days observing humanity and had managed to interpret every mundane activity as some form of military preparation. People checking their phones were monitoring intelligence networks. The commuters cutting each other off in traffic were practicing evasive maneuvers. A heated Twitter argument about movie remakes was classified as information warfare training. Sir. An alien officer rushed in, his exoskeleton clicking anxiously. We've intercepted a critical intelligence dispatch. One of Earth's high-level operatives has published a detailed assessment of our weaknesses. The main screen switched to display a blog post titled, 5 Reasons Why Cosmic Burger Should Be Launched Back into Space. Jack recognized the blog immediately. That's just Quinn Rodriguez. She writes food reviews. Quinn Rodriguez, self-proclaimed culinary truth-teller and owner of the blog No Reservations About My Opinions, had apparently visited the food truck that had set up shop directly beneath the alien observation post. The aliens huddled around, translating her review with grave concern. The alien invasion burger at Cosmic Burger is, quite frankly, an attack on your taste buds. The meat was so undercooked it could have piloted itself back to whatever galaxy it came from. The sauce had all the flavor complexity of interstellar dust. And don't get me started on the structural integrity. This burger falls apart faster than a Hollywood sci-fi plot. If aliens are watching us, they should abduct this chef immediately and put them out of our misery. 0 stars. Admiral Vextor's compound eyes widened in horror. This operative has completely dismantled our culinary intelligence operation. She's identified our surveillance position and is calling for abduction countermeasures. It's just a bad review, Jack explained. Quinn tears apart a new restaurant every week. Last month she made a pastry chef cry. The alien security chief leaned in. Sir, records show this Quinn Rodriguez has systematically devastated over 300 local food establishments with psychological warfare. Her kill count is impressive. They're not kills. They're just bad reviews, Jack protested. But Admiral Vextor was already updating the threat assessment. This Quinn Rodriguez must be one of your most feared information warfare specialists. Her ability to demoralize targets with linguistic precision indicates advanced psychological operations training. Jack watched as Quinn's profile was added to a growing database of Earth's elite forces, which now included Karen Williams, 3 teenagers with YouTube gaming channels, a postal worker who delivered mail in record time, and a yoga instructor whose class was described as pain endurance training disguised as wellness. One thing was becoming clear: the more ordinary humans acted, the more terrified the aliens became. After a week of observation, Admiral Vextor was visibly agitated. His exoskeleton had developed a nervous tic, and his command staff had begun taking stimulants just to keep up with Earth's perceived military readiness. We cannot maintain this stalemate indefinitely, Vextor announced during the daily briefing. Jack was half listening while trying to convince his boss via text that alien first contact was, in fact, a valid reason to extend his unexpected vacation time. Commander Murphy. Vextor's voice snapped Jack back to attention. We have decided to conduct a small tactical test of Earth's capabilities. Jack looked up from his phone. A test? What kind of test? Nothing that would provoke full-scale retaliation, the Admiral assured him. A minor disruption to assess response protocols. Before Jack could object, the alien tactical officer announced, localized communication disruption field deployed, Admiral. Earth sector NR7 is now experiencing what they call a network outage. Jack's eyes widened. Wait, you've blocked cell service? Where exactly? The tactical display showed a suburban neighborhood called Maple Creek Estates. "Oh no," Jack groaned. "That's where Dave Thompson lives." "This Thompson is significant?" Vextor inquired. "He works from home as an IT specialist and runs the neighborhood HOA Facebook group," Jack explained. "He once filed 17 complaints because someone painted their mailbox the wrong shade of beige." As if on cue, alarms began blaring throughout the alien command center. The main view screen showed a middle-aged man in a bathrobe storming out of his house, phone held high above his head. "What the actual hell?" Dave Thompson was shouting, spinning in circles trying to find signal bars. "I was on a Zoom call with Singapore." The alien crew watched in fascination as Dave marched up and down his driveway, rebooting his phone, cursing at the sky, and finally getting into his car to drive around the block testing signal strength. "Sir, the human is executing an electromagnetic countermeasure sweep," reported a nervous sensor officer. "He's probing our disruption field boundaries with remarkable precision." Within minutes, Dave had called the cable company, filed an FCC complaint, and posted on Nextdoor using his emergency backup hotspot to alert neighbors about the outage. The alien command center watched in horror as dozens, then hundreds of residents began their own signal testing routines. "Look at their coordination," whispered a junior officer. "No central command, yet they've established a complete signal mapping grid using only civilian communication tools." On screen, Dave had set up a folding table in his driveway with his laptop and what appeared to be networking equipment. He was wearing what Jack recognized as his customer service battle headset and talking animatedly to someone on his emergency line. The aliens hurriedly activated audio surveillance. "Don't care if you need to send a technician, this is unacceptable." Dave was shouting. "I've got 7 bars yesterday, then suddenly 0? No, I will not try turning it off and on again. I've been in it since before you were born. I want your supervisor's supervisor on the line now." Admiral Vextor's command staff huddled together, frantically analyzing the situation. "Sir, the human's technical knowledge is extensive. He's using advanced terminology to bypass the service provider's defensive protocols. He's escalating to their command structure," another added. Dave had now connected a signal booster to his router and was pointing various antennas toward the sky, directly at the cloaked alien vessel without realizing it. "Is he detecting us?" Vextor asked, mandibles clicking nervously. "Impossible," the stealth officer responded, though without much conviction. "Our cloaking technology is." An alarm blared as one of Dave's improvised antennas sent a power surge through the alien scanning array. "Sir, the human has counter-hacked our surveillance system." Jack tried not to laugh. "He's just trying to boost his Wi-Fi signal." Dave works remotely for a security software company and has 3 teenage kids who game online. His home network looks like NASA mission control. But the aliens weren't listening. On screen, Dave had begun a detailed technical rant to the customer service representative that sounded, to alien ears, suspiciously like advanced combat coding. "This packet loss is ridiculous. I'm seeing DNS propagation issues across multiple IPv6 subnets. The latency suggests deliberate traffic shaping. Are you throttling my neighborhood specifically?" Admiral Vextor slammed all 4 hands on the console to abort the test. "Restore their communications immediately." Within seconds, cell service returned to Maple Creek Estates. The aliens watched as Dave's phone suddenly showed full bars. He looked suspiciously at the sky, muttered something about big telecom covering their tracks, and returned inside, but not before pointing directly at the invisible alien ship and making the universal "I'm watching you" gesture. "That human," Vextor said quietly, "is not civilian technical support. He must be one of your cyber warfare commanders." Jack didn't bother correcting him. Dave Thompson, whose greatest military achievement was organizing his spice rack alphabetically, had just unintentionally terrified an alien armada. "Should we prepare for planetary bombardment, sir?" asked the weapons officer tentatively. Admiral Vextor shook his head. "No. If they can detect our surveillance this easily, any aggressive action would be suicide." He turned to Jack. Commander Murphy, we request formal diplomatic communication with your military leadership. Jack stared at the ceiling and wondered if it was too late to transfer to the Department of Sanitation. The alien flagship's negotiation chamber was unnecessarily dramatic, in Jack's opinion. The lighting was dim and pulsed ominously, the seats were designed for exoskeletons rather than human spines, and there was a constant, low humming that made his fillings vibrate. I keep telling you, Jack said for what felt like the 1,000th time, I'm not qualified to negotiate for Earth. I'm not military, I'm not government. Well, technically I am government, but the DMV doesn't handle extraterrestrial relations. Admiral Vex Tor and his command council exchanged knowing glances. After 2 weeks of observation, they'd become convinced that Jack's persistent denial of authority was itself an advanced negotiation tactic. Commander Murphy, Vex Tor began ceremoniously, our Cultural Intelligence Unit has completed its assessment of Earth's history and capabilities. We are impressed. Our holographic display activated, showing scenes from human history. Wars, technological developments, social media arguments, and episodes of various reality TV shows flickered by. Your species has dedicated more resources to combat development than any known civilization, the Admiral continued. While other species explore science or art, humans have perfected the art of conflict. Jack squirmed uncomfortably. That's not exactly. You have no central military command because you don't need one, Vex Tor pressed on. Every human is a potential warrior. Your children train in combat simulators before they can speak properly. Your elders maintain psychological warfare skills well into their senescence. The display showed kids playing Fortnite, then shifted to an elderly woman meticulously documenting neighborhood violations for an OA meeting. And most impressively, Vex Tor's voice lowered to something approaching reverence. You wage constant warfare against yourselves without destroying your civilization. What better way to maintain combat readiness than perpetual internal conflict? Jack opened his mouth to object, then closed it again. There was a weird, twisted logic to the alien's interpretation that he couldn't entirely refute. So, Jack said carefully, you're not going to invade us because you think we're all secret soldiers? Invade the most militarized planet in the sector? Vex Tor made a sound that might have been alien laughter. That would be suicide. No, Commander Murphy, we wish to establish diplomatic relations. A subordinate officer approached with a tablet-like device. Our intelligence division has prepared this summary of your most elite civilian warriors for your verification. Jack looked down at the screen and had to suppress a laugh. The aliens had compiled a list of Earth's most dangerous military assets, which included Karen Williams, Psychological Warfare Specialist. Dave Thompson, Cyber Command General. Quinn Rodriguez, Tactical Assessment and Demoralization Expert. A group of teens at a skate park, labeled Urban Terrain Navigation Corps. A CrossFit instructor, identified as Elite Physical Conditioning Commander. 3 middle-aged women at a wine bar, categorized as Intelligence Analysis Unit. These are just regular people, Jack said weakly. Admiral Vex Tor nodded solemnly. Your continued commitment to this cover story is admirable, Commander, but unnecessary. We respect Earth's military prowess and wish to avoid conflict. Jack realized that the truth that humans were just chaotic, often petty creatures with no grand military design would actually be more frightening to the aliens than their misconception. If humans could cause this much alarm just going about their daily business, what would the aliens think if they knew it wasn't even coordinated? Well, Jack said, suddenly inspiration striking, since you've discovered our, secret, I suppose there's no point denying it anymore. The alien command staff leaned forward eagerly. Earth's strength, Jack continued, improvising wildly, is indeed its civilian population. Our strategy is unpredictability. Brilliant, whispered Vex Tor. A species that weaponized chaos itself. 3 days later, Jack stood in the DMV parking lot watching the massive alien flagship ascend into the cloudy afternoon sky. Beside him stood Karen Williams, who was documenting the departure on her phone for her Aliens Among Us Facebook group that had gained 1.2 million followers overnight. "I still can't believe they signed a peace treaty with you," she said, not looking up from her phone. "No offense, but you're the guy who took 15 minutes to process my license renewal last year." "Yeah, well," Jack shrugged. "Turns out the aliens are terrified of us. Not because of our military or technology, but because of this." He gestured vaguely at the crowd that had gathered to watch the departure, many of whom were complaining about the spacecraft's engine noise or trying to sell alien merchandise on makeshift stands. The formal treaty between Earth and the Galactic Confederation had been signed that morning. Jack had insisted on hosting the ceremony at the DMV, partly because he hadn't been authorized to take any more time off work, but mostly because he thought it would be funny. Admiral Vextor had agreed to recognize Earth's sovereignty and establish trade relations. In return, Earth promised not to deploy its civilian defense force beyond the solar system without prior notification. The fact that this force was just people going about their daily, chaotic lives was a detail Jack had carefully omitted from the official record. As the alien ship disappeared into the clouds, Jack felt his phone vibrate. It was a notification from Quinn Rodriguez's food blog, Alien Cuisine, all advanced technology, but they still can't season their food properly. Jack winced. The review was already getting thousands of shares across the galaxy. Dave Thompson approached, still wearing his bathrobe despite it being mid-afternoon. "I've analyzed their communication protocols," he announced without preamble. "Their encryption is decent, but their bandwidth management is embarrassing. I could optimize their whole network with a weekend and a six-pack." Jack nodded seriously. "I'm sure they'd appreciate your expertise." Within a week, the story of Earth's fearsome civilian army had spread throughout the galactic community. Other alien species began approaching Earth with cautious diplomatic overtures, each one apparently warned about humanity's unique defense strategy. Jack found himself promoted to Director of Extraterrestrial Relations at the newly established Department of Interstellar Affairs, which operated, to his amusement, out of the renovated DMV building. His job was essentially to continue being unimpressed by alien technology while explaining that, no, humans couldn't help how intimidating they naturally were. The irony wasn't lost on Jack. Humanity had accidentally gained galactic respect, not through military might or advanced technology, but because our everyday behavior was so chaotic and passionate that an advanced alien civilization had mistaken it for military genius. 6 months after first contact, Jack sat in his new office reviewing reports from various alien diplomatic missions. Each one contained some variation of the same observation. Humans appear genetically predisposed to combat readiness and maintaining constant vigilance through behaviors they insist on normal civilian activities. Karen had been appointed Civilian Cultural Ambassador, a position that mainly involved terrifying alien diplomats with her complaints about their spacecraft parking and the quality of their presentation materials. Quinn's blog had gained an interstellar following, and her harsh reviews of alien establishments had somehow become a perverse status symbol among galactic restaurateurs. And Dave had been hired as a technical consultant by 3 different alien species, none of whom understood that his aggressive approach to customer service calls wasn't actually advanced negotiation tactics. Jack leaned back in his chair and smiled. Humanity had stumbled onto the ultimate defensive strategy, just being our complicated, irritable, passionate selves. No military needed when your civilians were chaotic enough to be mistaken for elite warriors. As if on cue, his intercom buzzed. "Director Murphy, the ambassador from Proxima Centauri is here. He seems concerned about something called TikTok challenges and wants to know if they're required combat training for Earth youth." Jack sighed and straightened his tie. Another day, another alien civilization to reassure that no, humans weren't plotting galactic domination. We were just being human, which, as it turned out, was scary enough.